Yeah, what I was running into, what that brick wall was, was the fact that my superiors had created the torture program. So John complaining to them wasn't going to accomplish anything. In December of 2007, I went public. And to make a long story short, I was later indicted in 2012 on for 3 counts of espionage for going public, and 2 other felonies. I hadn't committed espionage, and those charges were dropped. But I ended up taking a plea to a lesser charge just to make things go away. I was facing 45 years in prison. I had 5 kids at home, and so they offered me 23 months or 30 months. I would do 23 months versus rolling the dice at 45 years. I took the deal and got out, a little bit more than 10 years ago. It's been a while now.
Yeah. And so, what you were charged with, essentially, was they were trying to say you outed a CIA agent, right? But this information was already known. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, what they charged me with, and I'm only the second American in history that's been charged with this. They charged me with outing the true name of a CIA officer. Then the name was never made public. You can't find it anywhere. What happened was an author called me and asked me if I could introduce him to any of this list of 12 people that he sent me. I said, I don't know any of these people. And then he sent me a second list of 12. And I said, look, clearly you know this issue better than I do. I don't know any of these people. And then he said, what about the guy that you mention on page whatever of your first book? I think his name is John. And I said, oh, that's John Doe. I said, I don't know whatever happened to him. He's probably retired and living in Virginia somewhere, is what I said. But I confirmed the last name. He already had the last name. I confirmed it. It was never made public, but that's what they used to get me.
Yeah, and so the reason why I wanted to have you on is a couple of things. You have this internal knowledge of working in the intelligence community, and certainly there's a lot of debate right now about the intelligence community. But I want to start somewhere else. So the Trump administration has, made it a focal point to kind of dismiss a lot of the U.S. government as the so-called deep state and wants to dismantle it. As someone who understands kind of the culture and the people in the CIA, one, how does Trump's kind of assessment match up with your experience of the CIA? And then 2, what do you think the reaction is internally of the CIA? How do you think the CIA culture would feel about someone like Trump and what he's saying?
It's actually a more complicated question than it appears to be on its face. I know I have friends who are close to Trump, and they tell me that Trump is legitimately concerned about what he calls the deep state. Now, we don't have to call it the deep state. We can call it the federal bureaucracy, right? It's just that unelected group of senior government officials that serve through presidential administrations. Presidents come and go. These guys are around for 30, 35 years. So, sure, there's a deep state. Even if you don't want to call it that, you can call it whatever you want. But yeah, there are these people in the intelligence community who are around forever. On the one hand, I can understand why Trump feels threatened by these people. I understand it. The likes of John Brennan and Jim Comey and Jim Clapper and all these people that meant him ill. I get it. But then at the same time, it was Trump who named Gina Haspel, who's like the queen of the deep state. He named her as the CIA director. Made 0 sense to me.
And you went to jail for essentially exposing what she covered up. Right?
She was doing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Gina was the godmother of the torture program. Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo was the consummate intelligence insider. And you name Mike Pompeo as the CIA director and then Secretary of State? Oh my God. So on the one hand, I get Trump's unease. On the other hand, I don't understand why he doesn't clean house. Keep this in mind too. One of the first things that I was told when I was first hired is that the CIA is unusual in government in that it is not covered by the protections of the Civil Service Act. We serve at the pleasure of the president. So if the president doesn't like your face or he doesn't like your tie and he says you're fired, you're fired. That's it. It's done.
And
So why?
sorry to interrupt you. The Civil Service Act creates some sort of criteria for who can be fired and how
That's
and
right.
hired, and you're saying the CIA doesn't have that. They serve at the
That's
behest of the
right.
president. Okay.
So if there is no Civil Service Act protection at the CIA, why doesn't Trump just fire the people that he doesn't like? That's what I would do if I were president. If I legitimately believed that these people were plotting my overthrow, I'd fire them. Okay, that's on the one hand. On the other hand, he actually has fired people. He fired all of the DEI people, right? The CIA had this DEI office that nobody gave two shits about. Nobody paid any attention to. Those were the people that got fired. He didn't like the conclusion in the Russia national intelligence estimate. So he fires all the Russia analysts. Well, that's not going to help you in any way to fire the Russia analysts. And then a third point, this is something that was a story that was broken by the New York Times just a few days ago, that SEAL Team 6 in 2018 was sent by boat to go to North Korea to plant a bug in the building that the North Koreans were going to be staying in while negotiating diplomatic recognition with the United States. Remember, briefly in 2017, 2018, we're talking to the North Koreans. Trump and Kim Jong-un meet, I think first in Singapore and then right on the border. So Trump apparently sent SEAL Team 6 by boat to go ashore in North Korea, plant the bug, and leave. Instead, some fishermen spot the boat, North Korean fishermen. And so they're puttering over to the SEAL team boat to see, hey, who are you guys and why are you fishing in our area? And the SEALs killed everybody on the boat. Just killed everybody. And then aborted the mission and went back. By law, you must report such a covert action operation to the congressional oversight committees beforehand. If it's that sensitive, and this would have been, you would report it either to what's called the Gang of Four or the Gang of Eight. The Gang of Four are the chairman and vice chairman, so the Republican and the Democrat, on the Senate committee and the House committee. The Gang of Eight are the next person down on each of those committees too. Never said a word to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, never said a word to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. And then when it went bad and the SEALs killed everybody, that would require by law a second report to the oversight committees. They never said a word. So I am genuinely perplexed as to Donald Trump's view of the CIA and whether it means him harm or it strengthens his administration. And I'm not sure that he's sure what to do about it.
Yeah, and that's interesting you say that, because I always think partially what he's playing into, this doesn't speak to his motive necessarily, but partially what he's playing into is, I think the American public kind of has this perception of the CIA as this rogue organization that's all over the world, manipulating elections, assassinating people, and they have no oversight. As someone who was in the CIA, what do you think of that kind of characterization of the organization?
In part, that's true. They can be rogue. They do overthrow governments. They do steal elections. They do assassinate people. They kidnap them. They used to have at least secret prisons. They used to have a torture program. But that was all with oversight. This is a beef that I have with the overseers, is that they're not really overseers like they were in the second half of the 1970s and mostly through the 1980s. They're just cheerleaders for the CIA. Well, anything the CIA wants to do, Congress rubber stamps it. Or not even Congress, just the oversight committees, because the rest of Congress doesn't know what the CIA is up to. The information is too highly classified to let them know. So I'm not seeing oversight. I'm seeing cheerleading.
And maybe you can help us with this, because one of the things I've been doing recently, I read James Risen's book on Senator Frank Church, which I highly recommend to folks. It was a really
Awesome
great
book.
Yeah, and a great profile in courage. And I think we're looking for folks to do that today. I think a lot of American citizens are looking for that type of
Yes.
figure, and I think in some respect you were that type of figure. So
Oh,
what was
geez,
it that
thank you.
finally drove you to do it, to resign and to become somewhat critical of an organization you'd worked really hard to be a part of?
Nolan, I wish that I could tell you that, I stood up and I told them, and that wasn't it at all. I mean, I wish I was that heroic figure. I'm not. To tell you the truth, the overriding concern or the overriding issue in my decision to resign was that I had just gotten a divorce, and my ex-wife and my two sons, who were young, they were 9 and 6, had moved back to Ohio. And little kids, especially boys, they need their father in their life. And so I decided to resign and spend those weekends, with my kids that I otherwise would have spent in Afghanistan or Pakistan or Iraq, dodging bullets and car bombs. And so that was my decision. With that said, I kept waiting for somebody to say something about the torture program. It was just so patently illegal to me. I couldn't imagine that somebody wouldn't come forward. And then in December of 2007, Brian Ross from ABC News called me and said that he had a source who said that I had tortured Abu Zubaydah, who we believed when we captured him was the number 3 in Al Qaeda. He wasn't. I said that was absolutely untrue. I was kind to Abu Zubaydah. I was the only person who was kind to Abu Zubaydah. And I said, I never laid a hand on him or on any other prisoner. And he said, and I had no idea this was an old reporter's trick, he said, well, you're welcome to come on the show and defend yourself. Well, you know what? I wasn't even going to do that. But in the 5 or 6 days between that phone call and when I actually, decided to give him an interview, President Bush gave a press conference in which he lied and said that we did not have a torture program. And then a couple of days after that, he said, well, if there is a torture program, it's because of a CIA guy who's just gone wrong. And my wife was still in the CIA. And she's like, you got to defend yourself, my second wife. And I said, Brian Ross's source is at the White House. Has to be. And they're going to pin this on me. So I went on and I called him and I said, I'll answer your questions. And I decided that whatever he asked me, I was going to tell the truth. And so that's what I did. And I said 3 things. I said the CIA was torturing its prisoners. I said that torture was official U.S. government policy. It was not the result of a rogue CIA officer. And I said that the policy had been personally approved by the president himself. And so all hell broke loose from there. And I thought, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. And I went with it.
Yeah, and I remember also, I believe you also wrote a public letter while you were in prison to Edward Snowden, giving advice to him about how to best approach his whistleblowing activity, and I imagine you've done that to others. So I think that story is going
Yeah,
to
I
be
have.
critically important. What's some advice you have to folks maybe who are in government, who are seeing what's going on there right now, who are wrestling with their kind of ethics and morals and commitment to the country?
Oh, yeah. First of all, go with your heart. But even more importantly, the very first thing you do is hire an attorney. Not just an attorney, but by an attorney who is skilled in whistleblower defense. That's really the most important thing. Don't say a word to anybody unless your lawyer is sitting in the chair next to you. That's the most important thing.